I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening for the 17th anniversary of the horrible attack on the United States. It's hard to believe that it was 17 years ago that we witnessed what is now known as the start of Patriots' Day. Not unlike other events in history, we all remember where we were on that day. It is events like this that help us remember not only what happened that day, but also our 7 lost neighbors. For the last several years, we have had strong support from the Legion, the American Legion Post 153, and we've been able to hold this event for 5 years. The governing body committed to holding these events a few years ago, and we've been very lucky to be able to do it each year. And we hope we will be able to continue in the future. Before we start, I'd just like to introduce the mayor and council. The mayor will be up later speaking, but I'd like to introduce Mayor Mishagna, Council President Capelli, Mike Mintz, Kelly Epstein, and Rob, I remember your last name, Metzdorf. I'd like now to ask Reverend Mark Serino, pastor of the First Congregational Church, United Church of Christ, with the invocation. Yes, sir.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Gracious and loving God, creator of all things, we are grateful for our time here today. With heaviness in our hearts, but hope in our souls, we gather on this 9/11 to remember that day when so many lost their lives in violence and hate. We ask you to send a gracious portion of your Spirit to be with us today, to be with those who still suffer and struggle in the memory of that day, with the families of those who died, with those who went to the scene and labored, with all the firefighters and paramedics and police officers, with all the nurses and doctors, and all those who helped on that tragic day. And for any of those who may be haunted by memories of that day, we ask your blessed mercy. We gather today to remember. We gather today so that we do not forget both the power and the pain of the moment and of the promise that you hold out to us that a new and better day is coming. We come today with heavy hearts, but with hope in our souls, that we may be the beginning of a new and a better place and a better world, where violence and hatred does not unnecessarily take lives of those whom we love and care about. We thank you for the gift of our time together today. We thank you for this moment of prayer, and we ask your presence to be with us, to soften our hearts, to sharpen our minds, and to make us one with you and with all people. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Can I ask the national anthem? Ladies to come on up, please. By the way, these are high school students who volunteered to do this year.
My name is Mia Shaw. My name is Jane Lynn.
My name is Karen Woodley.
And shoot. And salute.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light stripes and bright stars, for the perilous fight, for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does the star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
True.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon or good evening. This is, as Councilman Opel mentioned, this is the 17th anniversary of one of the most tragic days in the history of the United States. Some people asked me when we started this program in 2011, why the Legion and the town or the borough were cooperating on what became Patriot Day. The answer was simple. Of the 2,975 souls that died on that day, there were hundreds of veterans. Not only those who went down in the towers in New York, but there were several of our Park Ridge 7, two veterans. There were 96 veterans at the Pentagon and several on that plane that went down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. This was the most tragic day that the United States had ever experienced, including Pearl Harbor. It's since become not an official, but an unofficial patriotic day, and someday they may make it a paid holiday. They're working on that now. You may have seen a lot of coverage the last couple of days, of course. Some people say, well, it's 17 years. Why are we honoring these people? A philosopher once said that the worst thing that can happen to someone is that they would be forgotten. I'm happy and proud, along with my co-chairman for a number of years, Bob Opel, that Park Ridge, when we started in 2011, we had over 300 people. I noticed that we have a great turnout tonight, but because of the weather, we would have had more people. We've never had less than 200 each time we've performed this event. And the last 2 years, as you would know if you were present, we have the luminaries, thanks to the Girl Scouts in Park Ridge and the Boy Scouts who join with us every year. I'm happy to say that I thank the parents who keep bringing their children here, because you've got to inculcate into these young people what this day means. When we're gone, they're the ones, the future of America. They're the ones that are going to have to continue this ceremony. And I hope that with the reputation Park Ridge has of having the largest Memorial Day parade in Bergen County, the largest Patriot Day in Bergen County, that our borough will maintain its dedication to honoring America's heroes. And I want to ask that each and every veteran here today, would you raise your hand and let's give them a round of applause. Because without the veterans, there would not be any freedom. We are going to have introduction of guests by our good friend, Mayor, Mr. Yakner.
The attacks of September 11, 2001 changed the world, our country, our state, our town, and 7 Park Ridge families forever. No longer can we board a plane, attend a sporting event or concert, or see an unaccompanied bag without thinking of that dreadful act and the cowards that committed it. Living in the shadow of New York City, we all have been personally touched by the attack and all know someone whose family was affected. For those that lost a family member, the daily pain of their absence is a reminder of that day. 17 years later, the pain remains and the loss is felt by all of us. The other side of that day is the thousands of heroic acts that were performed by ordinary people who put others before themselves and risked and often gave their lives to help others. Most that they didn't even know, but they responded without hesitation and went to their aid. On that day, we weren't from different groups. We were all Americans, and we acted like Americans, putting others ahead of ourselves. In the following days, many continued to put themselves in harm's way and to volunteer, and we are still losing people from illnesses related to 9/11. 9 years ago, the United States Congress designated September 11th a National Day of Service. People who lost their family in the 2001 attacks requested the official day as a way to honor their loved ones. This is a fitting tribute to both those that gave their lives and those that came to their aid. Like many New Jersey towns, Park Ridge lost residents on that horrific day. 7 of our neighbors. They were husbands, fathers, sons, brothers, and friends. In the aftermath of the attacks, we as a community pledged to remember and to honor them. We are here today to keep that commitment. As I read off the 7 names, please take a moment to think of them and their families. Paul Biattini, Joseph Keller, Ron Magnuson, Joseph Mayo, Scott Vassell, Paul Rizza, Martin Wortley. Let's take a moment. Thank you.
To punctuate what the mayor said, it reported in a newspaper yesterday, said that upwards of 2,000 first responders have died since that day because of the efforts that they put in to trying to save these other Americans. And they will continue to die because of the various cancers that they picked up in their volunteer efforts to help save each and every man, woman, and child. And I might point out that of the 2,750 that were killed at the two towers, the youngest was a 2-year-old baby. We have a treat. It's the first time she's honored us with her presence. Lori Fredericks is going to sing America the Beautiful. She has a rich background. I might point out that her husband is our director of television for PKRG. He's done an excellent job over the last few years, as they always have. I know on the back of our program, and each of you should have one, we thank everyone who is responsible for today. And some did a little more than others, but each and every one who is listed here did a tremendous job in making this program a success. Laurie has sung in Canada, in Korea, in the United Kingdom, and throughout the United States. She has many honors, and we're delighted that she will be here tonight and hopefully in the future. So it's my pleasure to introduce Laurie Fredericks.
Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties of the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful, for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self thy country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful, for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy God with brotherhood from sea to shining sea.
Thank you, Laura. That was a magnificent rendition. She puts emphasis on what the quintessential Americanism means. At this time, in honor of all those who perished, including active serving members of the armed forces, on September 11th, 2001. The American flag will be lowered to half-staff, and buglers Reg Duncan and Frankie Scott will conduct the music. I draw your attention to the flagpole. Councilman Opelt and Commander Joseph Valerie of the American Legion, with the color guards assembled. We have the color guard from American Legion Post 153, and we have the Marine Corps League color guard also from 153. It's the first time they've joined us in the years. They're now an integral part of our post. So the color guard will now, along with the commander and Councilman Opelt, lower the flag to half staff. And salute. Two. Are the candles all lit? Okay. Again, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming here tonight, and also for the magnificent help that has been given to us by those people who were named on the back page. Gloria Fredericks, our guest soloist, will once again perform You'll Never Walk Alone.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky, and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
The presentation of wreaths will now take place. Mayor, will you present the wreath from the borough? You're accompanied by Councilman Yes. next wreath will be presented by Commander Joseph Collery from American Legion Post 153, Corporal Jesse Barker, Memorial Post. Next wreath will be presented by Annie Whitney, President of the Auxiliary Unit 153. That's good. Larry McKenna, do you have, are you going to present the wreath from the Sons of the American Legion, Squadron 153? Larry is past commander. I know they're all busy, but I would like a representative from the Marine Corps League to present the wreath on behalf of your organization and the 153. Oh, Commander Collery will present it.
Where do you want this over here?
And I might point out that every year, I know that most of the Scouts and the Girl Scouts weren't even born 17 years ago. And some of you, especially ladies, probably weren't born in 1988. That was a tragic day over Lockerbie, Scotland, when the Pan American Flight 268, I believe, was destroyed by Libyan terrorists. And since that time, a group of relatives have formed a remembrance society. And every year, before we come here, we see a wreath presented by that Lockerbie group. And the lady, is she here, Mrs. Rose Chulo? I also want to find out, because over the years, they somewhat dissipated because of moving away and so on. Do we have any relatives here tonight who lost, would you step forward, please? That would be Mr. Rizzo? Right. It's Mr. Rizzo's mother-in-law. Right. She comes here every year. We're sorry that her husband passed away 2 years ago. Are there any other relatives of those we lost? Okay, thank you, Mr. Rizzo. We appreciate your attendance every year. We ask everyone to join in a rendition of God Bless America. The young ladies from Park Ridge High School are going to lead off. Along with the Girl Scouts. Miss Levinson leading the way. Are the girls? Oh, okay. know I saw before Reverend Soriano will deliver the benediction.
Let us pray. God, you are boundless in your love for us and your care for each and every part of your creation. We thank you for your unfailing love for those we lost on 9/11 and for those who remain. We thank you that your word of hope to us today is that we will see them once again when we rejoin them in our life to come. We thank you for the gifts of the day, for sweet, even if difficult remembrances, and for loving thoughts, for kind activities, and for generous hearts. We thank you that you have made us your people once again, and we ask that you bless us today so that we may continue in your love, being who we are, gracious and loving, merciful and just, always in love in your sight. And we ask that you bless us today with all the good things that you can muster, that you create among us a people of courage and of strength, a people of generosity and of hope. And may God bless us today and be with us in all the days ahead. And let the people say, Amen.
I want to thank each and every one of you for coming again. And I want to thank God for allowing us to be here tonight without rain. If we thought we did rush the program a little, we did, but we got through it again. And I just want to say once again that the years that I've been in charge, along with Councilman Oakville, they've been very rewarding. And I hope that the young people today, with the parents and the Boy Scout and Girl Scout leaders, will continue with this ceremony every year to remember this Park Ridge 7 and all those men and women who were murdered on that day 17 years ago. God bless each and every one of you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
I'm Howard Fredericks with Park Ridge Television, and I'm here today with Councilman Bob Opelt. Where were you when the plane first hit the Twin Towers, and how did you find out that it happened?
I saw it on TV. I was home. I was very fortunate that day. Normally I would be going to New York City through the Trade Center into my office, but I had an appointment in New Jersey. So fortunately I wasn't there. So I was at my house watching it on TV, like a lot of people.
Yeah, that's very scary, the thought of being present when it actually happened.
Yeah.
So what does 9/11 symbolize for you?
Well, I go back a long time with the Trade Center. I was there when it was being built. I was one of the first tenants that went in there was American President Lines, and they went in the North Tower first. So I kind of grew up with it there. So it's a little bit of my working history fell down when the buildings went down. So it means a lot. You know, a lot of people I knew in there. Very good friend down in Woodcliff Lake. We lost him in 9/11. He worked for the Fitzgerald Group. And I think he was the only casualty from that town. But I worked with him for many years. I used to travel with him every night on the train. And one night he didn't come home.
So for you, 9/11 symbolizes the loss of the people that you knew.
Absolutely, yeah, a lot of them.
Why do you think it's important to commemorate 9/11 today, 17 years after the tragic events took place?
Very simply, I think the pain is still there in a lot of people. I know it is for people that I know who were associated with the Fitzgerald Group and the steamship industry that I was very close to. So it's something we should keep. I mean, It's kind of like our modern day Pearl Harbor.
During this current period of political division in our country, how can events like today's 9/11 memorial help?
That's a good question. That's a question I don't even know if I can answer. I think it can help. I think people start thinking a little differently today. They look at friendship a little bit stronger. It's got to help a little bit. You know, I don't know that it's going to resolve the nightmares that we're dealing with, but I sure hope it does.
So given that this is your last year on the council, how will this change what your involvement with the 9/11 ceremony is? Will you continue to come and will you continue to speak at the ceremonies?
I'll be here.
I'm here today with Mayor Keith Mashagna of Park Ridge. Good evening, Mayor Mashagna.
Evening, Howard.
Mayor Mashagna, where were you when the first plane hit the Twin Towers, and how did you find out it had happened?
Howard, I was at a conference in San Francisco, and I was just waking up, getting ready to go to my meetings, and my wife told me that a plane hit the tower. And oddly enough, I asked, was it on purpose? And back then, that was a weird question to ask, and my wife was a little surprised. And unfortunately, it was on purpose, and we found that out. But we were over there attending a conference. I happened to be on one of the same flights that crashed into the towers that left just a few days earlier. So it really hit home, and then we were grounded for several days, and getting back to New Jersey was very difficult. So that's where I was.
It's a very scary thought to think that you might have been on that same flight. Do you feel safer today following the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq?
Sadly, I don't think most Americans do at this point. I think what's going on in the world is a very dangerous place. I'm thankful that we have the men and women in uniform protecting us. But like I said in my comments, when I was a young man growing up, if we saw an unattended bag, we never thought twice about it. And sadly, we have to now, and we have to be vigilant. We have to involve the police when we see something that is questionable. So, unfortunately, I would have to say I don't feel safer these days.
Me neither. During this current period of political division in our country, how can events like our 9/11 memorial ceremony today help?
Well, Howard, in my comments today as well, I tried to say Americans always rise to the occasion, and we did on that day, we did on the days after, and we didn't worry about anybody's political affiliation or their religious beliefs. The heroes that went into those towers saved Americans, they saved their neighbors. So remembering that the best of what we're all about shines in these difficult times might remind us that on our day-to-day travels. So I think it's important that we do this. I'm committed to be involved as long as I can for Park Ridge. And I think ultimately people will remember that we're all part of one big family.
Yes, we're certainly all Americans, and it's very important to remember that today. Thank you very much, Mayor Mashagna.
Thank you, Howard.
I'm Howard Fredericks with PKRG-TV.